What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show, as we have a lot to get into in the world of volleyball, such as Liberty. Yes, the Liberty Flames pulling off their first ever ranked victory over Hawaii of all teams, beating them in the Stan Sheriff Center. Impressive stuff from Liberty. And they were the only one that beat Hawaii at Stan Sheriff Center. UCLA pulled off the win as they wound up winning the entire Outrigger Invitational, also beating Pepperdine, which was a little bit more dramatic than it needed to be, and they also beat Liberty as well. Also, how about SMU pulling off the upset over Baylor earlier in the week? And Middle Tennessee upset Auburn as well. Washington State upset BYU, pulling off a top 10 win for the first time since 2021 in the Clash of the Cougars. Also, Minnesota was victorious against Oregon as they clipped the wings of the Ducks. As we had a lot to talk about in NCAA women's volleyball, as well as a little high school volleyball, and we'll discuss the U.S. men's national team winning the NORCECA Continental Championship. So hand me a volleyball, set up the net, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you've made your way into episode 210 of Set Point. And without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on Spreaker. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on what is formerly known as Twitter, X, Instagram, and on TikTok at IE Sports Radio. We also have a Facebook page for those that still use Facebook. All you just have to do is type in the word IE, then sports, then radio in the search bar. Just look us up, and then you'll see our icon, like us, and then boom, that's how you're able to follow us on Facebook. We also have a website, www.iesportsradio.com. We promise you that it will be updated on a regular basis, as you will get the updated news, IE Sports Radio blog, our Hall of Fame, our Fans of the Month, our pages dedicated to each podcast, our community forum, and our merchandise shop, filled with sweaters, t-shirts, caps, all that sort of thing. For the last 9 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel, to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, we continue to be by the fans and for the fans. And with you, you are making us better by supporting us, IE Sports Radio. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. I also want to give a shout out to everyone who's continued to support me. I really do appreciate it. Definitely do give Set Point a follow on X at set_point.ie. Also do follow Set Point on Instagram. I'm really trying to get Set Point on Instagram being a thing. I know I've been slacking on the montages/reels on Instagram, but that's just because life has kind of slammed me down. Anyway, so want to give a shout out to the IE Sports Radio sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, the single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, it's low in sugar, and high in protein. This is some of the best jerky you can get your hands on, and all you have to do is visit www.planetjerky.net and place your order. And then that's how you're able to get some of that delicious Planet Jerky beef jerky. Once again, huge shout out to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, the jerky that is on a whole other planet. And do follow them on Instagram. They do have social media, as they can be followed on Instagram at Planet Jerky, and that's how you're able to follow them. Without any further delay, let us begin. As Larry B says, "What's up, Teran?" Well, if you're indoors, the gym ceiling. I know, okay, bad joke. But if you're on the beach, the sky. All right, I'll stop with the bad puns and dad jokes. Mike Pat says, "Woohoo, volleyball time." And thank you for popping into the chat room. All right, let's begin. So there were a good amount of upsets from last week. There weren't any groundbreaking ones, but we have to start off last Wednesday being in Dallas, Texas, as this was kind of a little bit of an I-45 matchup. I don't know if it's like it wasn't like Houston versus Dallas, but it still was an interstate rivalry, as we had Baylor taking on SMU in Dallas, Texas, and SMU, the Mustangs, who actually have a solid win over Florida State, which they wound up sweeping. I'm sorry, Mike Pat. They actually managed to sweep then number 11 Baylor in 5 sets. And I said sweep, I meant they managed to beat then number 14 Baylor in 5 sets. 21-25, 25-23, 25-21, 23-25, and 15-10. So SMU was led by Natalie Purdue, who had 16 kills, while Emma Clothier, the former Florida State star, had 13 kills, and she hit .550. Jamison Wheeler had 10 kills as SMU hit .242. They outdug Baylor 70-64, and the blocks were even between both teams, 12-12. Baylor did miss a lot of serves, though. They missed 18 serves compared to SMU's 8, which is oof. Baylor, on the other hand, was led by Kendall Stowers, who had 29 kills as she hit .303. Elise McGee also had 21 kills as she hit .311. The next kill leader for Baylor was Allie Sket. I'm going to mispronounce this one. Sek. If I mispronounced that one, I apologize. Ali Sek, who had 7 kills, or Zek. Either way, those were Baylor's kill leaders. As the dig leaders for SMU were Celia Cullen, who had 19 digs, Sinali Ululave had 18 kills, and Natalie Purdue had 13 digs, and Ululave had 18 digs. And then Baylor, in terms of the dig department, was led by Kendall Stowers, who had 16 digs. Lorrin Braceno had 14 digs, and Alexis DaCosta had 12 digs. Mike Pat says, "I always get tripped up with SMU because it sounds like they should be a state name like Southern Missouri or Southern Mississippi when it's actually Southern Methodist." Yeah, I kind of get tripped up with that as well. We're kind of going to need to not get tripped up about that because they're going to be in the ACC along with Cal and Stanford coming next season. So that's going to be something that we're going to be expecting next year in terms of the ACC play. Next up in terms of upsets, we had Liberty, the undefeated Liberty Flames, taking on Hawaii in the Outrigger Invitational. So this matchup actually happened after UCLA narrowly escaped against Pepperdine, which that was actually a very good match as well. UCLA narrowly escaped against the Waves. But Liberty upset Hawaii 25-17, 17-20, 17-25, 25-17, 23-25, 25-19, and 15-13 en route to their first ever ranked victory. So that's a huge monumental win. And they won it in over 5,000 fans in attendance. So good job to the Liberty Flames, as Cameron Bakis had... Bakis? I think that's how it's pronounced. Cameron Bakis had 25 kills, Kate Phillips 20 kills, and Julia Mangum had 15 kills. As a team, Liberty hit .233, and they outdug Hawaii 77-66, as Kate Phillips posted a 20-20 match. She had 20 kills and 20 digs, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. Erica Lowry had 17 digs, and Delaney Dilfer had 14 digs, as Hawaii was led by Amber Igide, and who had 20 kills. She only had 2 hitting errors, and she hit 429, which is doggone good. Riley Wagner also had 16 kills. The next kill leader after that was Kaylin Alexander, who had 7 kills. So, wasn't really the greatest night for Hawaii, as they hit 214, which wasn't bad, but unfortunately it wasn't good enough, as Hawaii wound up barely getting outblocked 9.5 to 9. The serves were pretty much even in terms of errors and aces. So all in all, this was kind of an even match, but we'll see what happens. But in all honesty, Hawaii, I just think this was kind of one of those not so great nights for the Rainbow Wahine. Liberty, unfortunately, wound up kind of crumbling after this, as they wound up getting swept by UCLA and Pepperdine the following night. So I don't know what it was with Hawaii. Maybe it was Hawaii was ranked, because you got to remember, Hawaii was ranked going into this week as they were number 23, and then they lost to said Liberty team, which was undefeated at the time, but unfortunately didn't have a true standout win. And again, this was their first ever ranked win in team history, so Hawaii was on the wrong end of history, sadly. Speaking of teams that were ranked for the first time this season, Auburn, which was number 25 in the AVCA Division I coaches poll, they actually wound up losing to Middle Tennessee of all teams. I was very surprised by this. Middle Tennessee, the team from the Conference USA. Okay. So, I don't know what happened, but Middle Tennessee wound up pulling the upset in 4 sets. It's not the greatest of all upsets, but it's still an upset regardless. This is considered an upset. Auburn came into this week undefeated. They were 5-0. A shallow 5-0, but still 5-0 regardless, as Auburn won the first set 25-22, but then Middle Tennessee wound up winning the next 3 sets 25-15, 25-23, and 25-22, as Middle Tennessee was led by Kayla Henley, who had 15 kills. Audrey Rhoda had 12 kills, as Middle Tennessee hit 270 for the match. They outdug Auburn 58-44, as their dig leader was Aaron Eisenhart, who had 16 digs. Taylor Eisert had 13 digs to go along with her 44 assists, and Laura Jansen had 12 digs. For Auburn, they were led by Belle Zimmerman, who had 11 kills, but she was the only one in double digits in terms of kills, as their next kill leader was Kyla Swanson, who had 9 kills, and then Bella Bell and Madison Shear had 8 kills. Auburn as a team hit 221, as they did outblock Middle Tennessee 9-6, but they did get out-aced quite a bit, 9-2, and they had 2 more service errors than Middle Tennessee. I was just very surprised that Auburn, of all teams, lost to Middle Tennessee. I didn't even know Middle Tennessee had it in them, but good job to Middle Tennessee. So, on Friday, we had ourselves 2 very good matches. I know I could probably get into the Pac-12 Big Ten matchup, but I'll save that for after my match of the week. BYU versus Washington State. So, I called this one the Clash of the Cougars just because both teams were named the Cougars, and I feel bad for the PA announcer or the reporter that had to report on this, just because whenever two team names have the same mascot, you basically can no longer use that mascot name. Or you just have to use the whole reference of, in the battle of 2 teams with the same mascot being named the Cougars, this team beat that team, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so Washington State was number 13 in the AVCA coaches poll, and honestly, this was probably their best chance to going up the coaches poll, because if they were to beat BYU, they would get the attention of everybody. And I even said it best in Mick Haley on 6 Rotations, the AVCA's women's volleyball show, said it best. If there's any week for Washington State to make noise, this is the week. And they needed to get some momentum going in, because they had Baylor and Texas on the road. So why not pull off a top 10 upset? And they actually did, as they beat number 8 BYU in 4 sets, as that's their first ever top 10 win since not first ever top 10 win, their first top 10 win since 2021 when they upset Washington. So Washington State was led by Pia Timmer, who had 21 kills, Iman Isanovich, I'm probably mispronouncing that, I apologize, but Iman Isanovich had 20 kills, Magda Jelarova had 11 kills. She actually became the all-time block leader at Washington State, so I heard. If that's incorrect, just call me out on it. Carly Basham had 16 digs as Washington State outdug BYU 55-48. Washington State hit 302 compared to BYU's 169, which that's pretty much going to get the job done. The interesting thing is that Washington State didn't even have one service ace, and they wound up winning, and they missed the 11th serve, so Washington State still must have been serving tough, even though they got 0 aces out of their serving. Also, they outblocked BYU 11-8. Just doing some quick mental math here, and yes, it is 11-8 as a team. BYU was led by Erin Livingston, who had 21 kills, but she was the only one in double digits in terms of kills, as BYU's next kill leader was Whitney McGowan Laura Enes and Kate Pryor, who each had 6 kills. So unfortunately for BYU, they fell on the road to Washington State, but that Washington State team is as good as advertised. There's a reason why they are chosen to finish second in the Pac-12. Speaking of the Pac-12, that's actually a perfect segue to go into this next little matchup. Number 10 Minnesota taking on number 6 Oregon. So Oregon was undefeated going into this matchup, and they did not drop a set. However, that kind of changed as Minnesota upset the Ducks. This was played in Stanford, Maples Pavilion, as this was the final year of the Pac-12 Big Ten Challenge, because Stanford is going to the ACC and Oregon is going to the Big Ten. I don't know why, but it is what it is. So Minnesota wound up winning the match 25-21, 23-25, 21-25, 25-20, and 16-14. As Minnesota was led by McKenna Wooker. So her last name is pronounced Wooker. I'm sorry if I keep mispronouncing it, but McKenna Wooker. McKenna Wooker led Minnesota with 21 kills on a .378 hitting percentage. Taylor Landfair had 18 kills, and Lydia Grote, the little sister of Maren Grote, who played at Washington, she had 14 kills, which is pretty darn good. Minnesota hit .323 compared to Oregon's .262 as Mimi Collier, I think it's Collier, not Collier. Collier had 20 kills, but she did have 10 hitting errors. Mimi Collier led Oregon with 20 kills. Gabby Gonzalez had 18 kills. Morgan Lewis, 16 kills. And Cara McGee, 12 kills. In terms of digs, that was barely won by Oregon, having won that category 68-66, as Georgia Murphy had 16 digs. Mimi Collier had 15 digs. Hannah Pukis and Gabby Gonzalez each had 14 digs. For Minnesota, Kylie Murr, the dig queen, she had 22 digs, while Melanie Schaffmaster had 18 digs to go along with those 51 assists. And McKenna Wooker had 10 digs as well to go along with her 21 kills. And then I guess I should also mention that Hannah Pukis had 58 assists to go along with those 14 digs and 2 service aces. But unfortunately for Oregon, they just fell to the hands of Minnesota. Now, Oregon did wind up beating Ohio State, which was not surprising. And then Minnesota sadly was stopped by Stanford the next night, as Stanford also beat Ohio State in 4, and they also beat Minnesota in 4. So Stanford wound up basically going the perfect 2-0 in the Pac-12 Big Ten Challenge. So, yeah. In all honesty, Stanford basically they were in prime form at Maples Pavilion, even though this doesn't really... There was 424 in attendance for the Minnesota-Oregon match. I'm not going to look up how many was in attendance for Minnesota, Stanford, or Ohio State, Stanford, or Ohio State, Oregon, but I'm not even going to bother with attendance. I just hope that for their sake, it was like it was somewhere in the 1000s, maybe 2000s, just because Stanford doesn't really get a high number of attendance in terms of women's volleyball, and it's sad because Stanford's women's volleyball team is really good, and it sucks, but what can you do? So the last upset to recap is UCLA taking down number 23 Hawaii in 4 sets. Now, let's get this out of the way. This is technically an upset in terms of AVCA coaches poll rankings. I don't think this is an upset in any way, shape, or form just because I saw how good UCLA really is, and I think UCLA is much better than most people give them credit for. They're only not ranked because, well, for starters, they lost a lot. They lost a good chunk to graduation. They lost Charity Looper to Louisville, and they now have a new head coach in Alfie Reft, who just came back from being with the U.S. women's national team at the NORCECA Championships. But anyway, UCLA took down Hawaii, and I had a feeling this kind of was going to happen. So Hawaii wound up narrowly winning the first set, 25-23. UCLA was actually down in the first set, but then they nearly made a comeback, but Hawaii wound up winning the last few points to take the first set. Then UCLA really took off the kid gloves, and they wound up taking that second set 25-15. Then the third set, UCLA inched out and won that third set 25-23. And then they were down a little bit in the fourth set, but they managed to scoop their way out of that deficit and win the fourth set 25-22 en route to winning the Outrigger Invitational. As they also, like I said earlier, they beat Liberty in straight sets on Friday, and they also beat Pepperdine in 5 sets on Thursday. I should also mention that the Hawaii losing to Liberty was actually, that match actually ended at like about 11 p.m. Hawaii time and 2 a.m. California time, Pacific Standard Time, and 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it was already the next day when Liberty upset Hawaii. So that's kind of your little Snapple fun fact right there. Anyway, so UCLA was led by Grace Olson, who had 16 kills. So that's kind of interesting right there. Grace Olson, she was nowhere near on the radar when it came to playing in the Long Beach State match, but it is what it is. And then Iman Njai and Sheridan Leverett each had 13 kills. Njai was named the MVP of the Outrigger Invitational. And then Peyton Dueck, if I'm mispronouncing that, I apologize. Peyton Dueck had 16 digs as UCLA hit 268. It's kind of good if you ask me, especially against Hawaii. They wound up winning that in front of 6,971 fans. Whoo boy. That's a lot of people for that little matchup. But then again, it's UCLA-Hawaii. It's always exciting. Hawaii was led by Riley Wagner, who had 17 kills, Kaylin Alexander, 15 kills, and Amber Igide. I want to say that's not how it's pronounced. I think it's pronounced Igide or Igide. Either way, Amber Igide had 12 kills. Talia Edmonds had 16 digs, and Kaylin Alexander, 11 digs. Hawaii only hit 187, and they even hit negative 57 in set number 2. So, big ouch right there for the Rainbow Wahine. Not a good week as they went 1-2, losing to the likes of Liberty and UCLA. But it's all good. And I guess I should mention that Pepperdine also went 1-2 as they, like I said, they lost to UCLA in 5. They actually lost to Pepperdine Pepperdine lost to Hawaii on Friday, and then they beat Liberty on the final day of the Invitational. And then Liberty, like I said, they went 1-2 after their upset win over Hawaii. They actually wound up losing out. So 3 teams tied for second place in this tournament. But for UCLA, this was a huge win for them because not only did they repeat as tournament champions, they got some respect from probably the AVCA. And for me, I will just say this. I think UCLA is much better than everyone gives them credit for. I really think UCLA is flying under the radar. And I'm still going to stand by what I say. UCLA is making the NCAA tournament this year. They definitely have loads of talent. And you know what? What's the scary thing about this is they did not have Anna Dodson did not go off. Anna Dodson did not have like the monster numbers that she had against Long Beach State. And I don't even think she played against Pepperdine on Thursday. I don't know the whereabouts of that, but it's kind of interesting right there. And Desiree Becker didn't even have the monster night against Hawaii, but that's the interesting thing. UCLA still has other players that could step up, like Iman Njai, Sheridan Leverett, Grace Olson, the two middle blockers that I just mentioned, Dodson and Becker. They also have Carly Hendrickson. Ashley Molina's done an outstanding job. But here's the thing. UCLA also ran a 6-2 offense. They had Audrey Pack setting as well. So UCLA is finding a lot of different ways to be extremely unique, just so they're not being the same over and over and over and over and over again. Because I think running a 5-1 with a freshman setter is kind of meh. That's putting a lot on one little freshman's shoulders, if you ask me. But it is what it is. So UCLA, they are actually back at it this week at Oklahoma. I don't know why they're playing Oklahoma. Don't ask why, but their next opponent is Oklahoma. They actually have a 2-match slate against the Boomer Sooners, as next week they actually kick off Pac-12 play against USC and Oregon. So it's going to be something to watch for, as we'll see if Oklahoma can give them a little bit of a battle right there. And then Hawaii, if I recall, they're playing TCU, and they're playing someone else. I think they're also playing Florida State. Now I remember. They're playing Florida State, and I didn't even have to look that up. So it's going to be an interesting week for Hawaii, as I think they're on the road, if I'm not mistaken. But regardless, I think Hawaii will eventually bounce back, but they're not going to get any ranked-on-ranked matchups. I think this was kind of the week where they should have held pat. I knew they were going to get a battle from UCLA just because UCLA is really good. And I saw them when they played Long Beach State. That team is as really good as advertised, as they are stacked across the board. And they're only going to get better as their future is going to get better and better. Hawaii travels to Fort Worth, Texas, or DFW, to take on TCU, Western Carolina, and Florida State in the Fight in the Fort tournament. And then Hawaii also kicks off Big West Conference play at home against Bakersfield and CSUN, or Cal State Bakersfield and Cal State Northridge. And then they have Long Beach State and UC San Diego on back-to-back nights on the road. That's going to be interesting right there for Hawaii. And I don't think I'll be able to see them on September 29th. For those that are wondering, are you going to be able to see Hawaii on September 29th? No. I'm actually going to be working, and I'm going to be working elsewhere, so sadly you won't be able to pull me away from my primary job, which really sucks, but it is what it is. But I will see Hawaii sometime down the line. I'll see them when they play UC Irvine, and I'll also see them when they in the Big West Conference tournament. I'm 99% certain they're going to finish in the top 6. So I'd be perplexed if Hawaii wound up dropping the ball. So there's that right there. Oh, but it also says that Hawaii is playing UC Irvine on a Friday. I don't know. Maybe I won't be able to make that match. Gosh darn it. Ah, darn. But we'll see. But then again, no, that's right. That sounds right. I don't think I'll be able to make it, but it's all good. Anyway, yes, Mike Pat, gotta go make that bread, and he's making volleyball dad jokes in the chat room on Spreaker. He says, "Can you dig it? I'll see myself out." Yeah, you've used that pun a lot, and then he says, "I guess if that joke was bad enough, you could block." Yeah, he says he's going to keep them coming. That one, I don't know about that one. That was, I wouldn't say that was the greatest. It was okay, but it wasn't the best. But I digress. But anyway, that's going to do it for all the upsets that happened in week number 3. There are some notables I need to go over. So, like I mentioned, Liberty's upset over Hawaii was actually their first ever win over a ranked opponent. Also, I have to give a shout out to Florida State women's volleyball coach Chris Poole as he earned his 900th win against North Texas this past week, as he became the 8th Division I head coach in women's volleyball to reach 900 career wins. So, huge congratulations to Chris Poole. He is 1 in 8 in regards to that. I was going to say 1 in a million, but honestly, he's only 1 in 8 when it comes to making that history. So I will just say congratulations to Chris Poole on that achievement, and I tip my hat off to you. I mean, I've kind of ragged on Florida State. I know I said that they're not the Florida State that they were last season, but they're scrappy, and I think they can make some noise. This week they have a tough week as they are home against Florida, which, boy howdy, Florida, let me tell you about Florida. They wound up narrowly escaping against Sacramento State. I was surprised that Sacramento State almost beat them, but they managed to pull it off, and they're still undefeated. Maybe me giving them my team of the week kind of gave them a big head. Speaking of which, that's a perfect segue to go into my team of the week for week number 3. That happens to go to the honor of Washington State. So, yeah, I gave Florida team of the week for last week, week 2. So, week 3's set point NCAA women's volleyball team of the week goes to Washington State. So, the Cougars, like I mentioned on Twitter, they pulled off their first top 10 win against opponents since 2021. They beat BYU in 4 sets, and they also swept Towson, which is no easy feat, and they also swept UC Irvine. So I was quite impressed by the Cougars because I basically said that this was kind of the week that they needed to come up big. So huge congratulations to Jen Greeny and the Washington State women's volleyball team, as they're definitely good as advertised, and I can definitely see them going somewhat deep in the NCAA tournament. I definitely think they have that potential, so do not sleep on Washington State. And then lastly, I do got to eat my crow here. I said that Long Beach State, Nebraska women's volleyball was going to be exciting. Well, it was kind of in the 3rd set, but oh my goodness. Nebraska kind of brought out the belt, and they spanked Long Beach State. Now, in my defense, I kind of forgot that Nebraska was playing Creighton. And Creighton did not have NORCECA in the lineup to begin with. But I will also just say, Nebraska also wound up winning that one in 4 sets. So they dropped their first set of the season, but they wound up still winning because it's the in-state rivalry between Creighton and Nebraska. But back to Long Beach State, Nebraska. All right, I admit I was completely wrong. The first 2 sets, Nebraska really came into play. I don't know why Long Beach State sadly kind of froze when they played those first 2 sets. Like, the second set was really ugly. They didn't even cross 10 points. They only had 8 points. They finished with 8 points. I was like, uh-oh. And I was literally thinking to myself, I maybe shouldn't have overhyped this matchup. Now, I wouldn't say overhyped. I just said that this was, don't be surprised if Long Beach State makes Nebraska sweat. Now, the 3rd set, it was a little bit closer than, it was kind of what I expected. And the first set, it was a little bit also what I expected, as Long Beach State was down, but they got within 3 at 18-15. But unfortunately, they got outscored 7-2 the rest of the way. And then in the 3rd set, they got within 1. They were only down 21-20 as they led early on, and then Nebraska just started kicking in a high gear. And eventually, Nebraska wound up winning the 3rd set 25-21, which is still close, but close unfortunately doesn't cut it. And that was the only set that really had Nebraska a little bit scared. But it was nothing that they couldn't ultimately handle, as Nebraska just really took care of business. So I give props to Nebraska on basically being aware of who their opponent was and not looking ahead. I don't think they were going to look ahead just because they do have Stanford on Tuesday. As of this recording, that'll be tomorrow. So if you're listening to this live tonight, then you'll be getting a nice little preview on Stanford and Nebraska later on the show. But for me, Nebraska is really good as advertised. So I give them props for that win. And speaking of matches that were going on tonight, Texas swept Rice as of this recording, as they actually had a little Monday matinee in the Gregory Gymnasium. So that's a nice win for Texas. I kind of expected it just because Rice, I wouldn't say they're crumbling, but they kind of aren't looking the same as they were back in week number 1. So that's no disrespect to them, but they just really aren't. Ever since Louisiana upset them, they just aren't looking the same. All right, but that is going to do it for last week, and I might as well just get into the AVCA / TeraFlex Top 25 Coaches Poll, as I already was getting into Texas Rice. So 25 through 21 consists of Dayton at 25, Auburn at 24, Iowa State at 23, Houston at 22, and Kentucky at 21. 20 through 16 consists of Kansas at 20, Ohio State at 19, Baylor at 18, Purdue at 17, and Arkansas at 16. 15 through 11 consists of Tennessee at 15, Creighton at 14, Penn State at 13, BYU at 12, and Washington State at 11. 10 through 6 consists of Georgia Tech at 10, Minnesota at 9, Pitt at 8, Oregon at 7, and Texas at 6. 5 through 1 is basically the same as last week, as that consists of Stanford at 5, Nebraska at 4, Florida at 3, Louisville at 2, and your still number 1 team in the AVCA / TeraFlex Coaches Poll in Division 1 is Wisconsin. So that's pretty much that right there when it comes to that Coaches Poll. So as you noticed, Iowa State and Dayton have moved into the top 25. Marquette had a little bit of a rough weekend as they lost to the likes of Pitt and Tennessee. They got swept by both of those teams, which is a big ouch-o-rama, if you ask me. So, and I want to say they did beat Loyola, which if they didn't, then I'd be surprised. But Marquette is no longer in the top 25, and I kind of have my little doubts when it comes to Marquette. I mean, I know they'll still do good in their conference in the Big East along with Creighton, but I don't know. There's something about them that kind of raises my eyebrows. And they actually didn't play Loyola. They just played Pitt and Tennessee, which they wound up losing both of those matches. And then Loyola also lost to Tennessee and Pitt, which was kind of expected. And then Tennessee, as they're kind of flying under the radar, as they and Purdue had the highest jumps at +3. They wound up beating Tennessee and Loyola. Tennessee wound up sweeping Marquette, and they beat Loyola in 4. So I could see kind of the jump right there. And then Purdue had a pretty darn good weekend. They beat Kentucky, and they also beat SMU. So that's something really unique, and I was really confused at first on this, but they actually had an actual tournament play on this. So they actually had an actual tournament where Kentucky-Houston, the winner of Kentucky-Houston played the winner of SMU-Purdue. And this was very unique. So Purdue managed to beat SMU, and then Kentucky beat Houston, the battle of two ranked teams. Kentucky topping Houston, 19-21. And then Purdue managed to outlast Kentucky. I think they were 20th in the coaches poll the previous week as they took down the 19th ranked Wildcats. So that's a good win on Purdue's part. They're really starting to pick things up after they were toppled in 5 sets against Loyola of Chicago and Creighton in straight sets on their home floor. So I really think Purdue's coming along nicely. Obviously, Chloe Chicoine is absolutely amazing. Eva Hudson is straight up phenomenal as well. And the little Poulter, Jordyn Poulter's little sister, is just straight up phenomenal. I really think that Purdue is starting to come into its own rather nicely. So don't be surprised if Purdue starts making their way up further and further up the top 25 ladder. I think they do have it in them, but it's still a long road up to the top. As, like I said, they're only 17th. It just and I also just say it just feels weird seeing Kentucky behind Arkansas and Tennessee. Woo! Who saw that one coming? That just feels rather wrong, if you ask me. But, it is what it is. And then, as you also saw, Marquette and Hawaii both dropped out. Hawaii, obviously, losing to the likes of, what's-their-face, UCLA and Liberty. And then Marquette, obviously, having a meh week against Tennessee and Pitt, getting swept by both those teams. So, I'm sure they'll be back in the top 25 soon, if they could beat Creighton. And if they don't have any other bad losses, but man, talk about a little bit of a rocky start, a little bit of a rocky edge after a little bit of a promising start for the Golden Eagles. So now that's going to do it for the AVCA Top 25, and that'll do it for the time being for NCAA Women's Volleyball. Let's discuss a little bit of high school girls volleyball, and that may not be everyone's cup of tea, but it kind of was mine. So, the Dave Mohs tournament is a girls volleyball tournament that is located in Orange County, and it's one of the longest running tournaments that you'll ever see, and it's a very prestigious tournament, and it's a really fun tournament if you ask me. It draws in some of the best teams from all over Orange County, and heck, it even had a team from San Diego participating. And also it had Mater Dei participating as well, so there was that right there. So when it came down to it, the final actually consisted of Mater Dei and Cathedral Catholic, as Mater Dei actually wound up going the entire tournament, going up to the final and not dropping a set. While Cathedral Catholic was the same thing, except they actually dropped a set in the semifinals to Huntington Beach, which the head coach is former set point guest Craig Pizzanti. But Cathedral Catholic managed to win their way as they wound up beating Huntington Beach in 3 sets. So how this tournament is formatted is that the matches are best 2 out of 3 instead of 3 out of 5. No one wants to play 3 out of 5 days because that's going to take a long time. So 2 out of 3 is the way to go. The first two sets are 25 points. You got to win by 2. If a third set is needed, then it goes up to 15 points. You still got to win by 2. Well, 15 is the target score, but you still got to win by 2. The standard rules of volleyball. Both teams get 2 timeouts per set, and there are no challenges because there's no camera angles and whatnot. And this is high school volleyball. You don't need freaking challenges. Anyway, so I was a little late arriving to the final, but at first it looked like Mater Dei was primed to win this tournament. But Cathedral Catholic, if you remember them from last year, they wound up winning everything. They won this tournament from last year. They wound up winning the entire CIF San Diego Section Championship. They wound up winning the CIF SoCal Regional Open Division Championship. And they wound up winning the CIF State Open Division Championship. And they wound up winning the whole National Championship. All that only dropping 1 set. Cathedral Catholic was world beaters, if you ask me. Unfortunately, as you all remember from last week, that winning streak, which actually totaled from 49 all the way until now, they actually wound up losing to Mater Dei in the semifinals of the Volleypalooza tournament in Texas, and they actually wound up finishing 4th in Texas as they dropped their 3rd place match. However, they got a little bit of redemption as they took the first set 25-19 against Mater Dei. Second set, Mater Dei kind of got together as I figured Kaylee Ostavar and Samara Gordon, they were doing their best to try to keep Mater Dei in it. And this is a player you got to keep your eyes and ears on. Emma Kingston. She's 6'4" and she's only a freshman. She's a middle blocker and she is straight up legit. She's only going to get better. And heck, even her head coach, Dan O'Dell, could probably throw her on the opposite. But I think for now she'll be at middle. So she is actually pretty darn good, and she's going to grow eventually. Obviously, she's only a freshman, and she did have a freshman mistake, which I'm going to discuss a little bit later on in the recap. But Mater Dei took the second set 25-19 as a third set was needed. They blocked the ball really well. They served tough, and their kill leaders were just really on point. So then in the third set, Mater Dei actually jumped out to a 3-0 lead. They were just serving so tough, and they eventually were getting blocks, which really helped the cause. And honestly, for them, I was thinking, okay, well, Mater Dei is basically... I think Mater Dei might have actually found their second gear. Also, in terms of weapons for Mater Dei, they had Isabel Clark. Now, I also have to mention that Mater Dei did not have setter Ava Ostavar, as she actually hurt her ankle earlier in the week against Redondo Union, which was not fun times. But Mater Dei has other setters. They had Julia Kakis as a setter, playing the setter position, and I think Emily Clark was also playing setter as well. So Mater Dei has other players that could step up as well. But back to the third set. They were up 3-0 after, I think it was a service ace. And it could have been 4-0, but Cathedral Catholic actually sends the ball on an overpass. It goes to Emma Kingston, and all she just needs to do is just hammer that ball down. But unfortunately, she mistimes it, and the ball goes right in. How do I describe this? The ball is passed over to her, but she doesn't swing at it, and then it just falls on her and onto the side of Mater Dei, and that basically, I think that's kind of what turned the tide right there, because being down 4-0 in set 5 would have prompted Cathedral Catholic to call timeout. But unfortunately, that was just not the case. And that is a freshman mistake on Emma Kingston's part, but she's going to learn from that, and she's going to make sure that never happens again. And also, it's really tough to continuously to have consistent volleyball, play consistent volleyball, because Mater Dei did actually play Redondo Union before this tournament in a non-league match where they wound up winning in 4 sets, and then they had 3 pool play games, and then they also had 2 matches prior to this beating the likes of Beckman as well as who they beat. Oh man, I'm blanking on who they beat in the semis, which is not good on my end. I should know this. They beat Beckman in the semis, and they beat San Juan Hills in the quarterfinals. So my mistake. Anyway, so a lot of mental wear and tear on Mater Dei, but they have a lot of experienced players that they've returned. Unfortunately for them, Cathedral Catholic just was serving tough. They were getting blocks, and they were just doing everything better. And their game started to progress a whole lot more as the third set just went on. And eventually, Cathedral Catholic went up 8-6 off of a dirty service ace, which clips the net and then eventually falls on the side of the opponent. And then they eventually wound up winning the third set 15-10. Errors also kind of caught up to Mater Dei in terms of hitting errors. As Cathedral Catholic does get its redemption, they beat Mater Dei, which was kind of a redemption win over them after they lost to Mater Dei in the Volleypalooza tournament, and they repeated as Dave Mohs tournament champions, as Jenna Haynes, who was on last year's CIF and National Championship team, was named the tournament MVP. And then Maya Evans also was named all-tournament for Cathedral Catholic. So all in all for Mater Dei and Cathedral Catholic, it was a great tournament. But for Mater Dei, Cathedral Catholic was just the better team in the end, as they just found that second gear to the point where they just kicked it into overdrive. But for Mater Dei, they will not see them again until they play in the open division, or until state. Heck, maybe even Durango, if the 2 teams are going to Durango. Or any other tournament, like the Nike tournament. But all in all, it was a great match, and I'm glad I attended it. And I even got to interview Juliana Kahn, the head coach of Cathedral Catholic. And I also got to interview Jenna Haynes and Maya Evans. That will be posted on my Instagram and on my X account after this. So keep a sharp eye out for that. So that is basically going to do it for the high school volleyball scene. I don't really have any other notable high school volleyball matches. I do think Cathedral Catholic is playing Miracosta and they're also playing Torrey Pines. They're eventually going to be playing Torrey Pines because that is a team in their league, which that's already fireworks right there. It's always a battle when Torrey Pines and a Cathedral Catholic face one another in volleyball. It's just a barn burner right there, and you love to see it if you're a high school volleyball fan, especially in San Diego. Those teams are just straight up nasty. Even the teams that aren't really all that great. And as for Mater Dei, they are back at it. They actually kick off league this week in Trinity League play. They have Rosary and J. Sarah, and then they have Orange Lutheran the following week, and then next week I want to say they have the Nike tournament. Not entirely certain, but it is what it is. So back to Cathedral Catholic. This was a huge win for them just because, well, to beat Mater Dei and get a little revenge on them is quite amazing if you ask me. So Cathedral Catholic isn't playing Miracosta, but they could play them in a tournament if both teams eventually make it, or they could play them in state. And it doesn't look like and it looks like Cathedral Catholic already played Torrey Pines. They wound up winning against Torrey Pines in 5 sets back on September 6th, which is quite nice. So great job to Cathedral Catholic, and I think Cathedral Catholic is the real deal. And they're still the real deal, even though they lost a lot to graduation, such as Julia Blyashov. And their coach kind of said it best. You don't just need one main player. You have other players that can get the job done, such as Jenna Haynes and a few others. You have to see the match to believe it. All right, but that's going to basically do it for some high school volleyball. Let's take ourselves a quick little commercial break. When we come back, we're going to recap the NORCECA Continental Men's Volleyball Championship, where the U.S., led by former set point guest and head coach John Speraw, wound up winning it, and we'll preview Week 4 of the NCAA Women's Volleyball season. Keep it locked here. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No, not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on the defining moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each And every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter at SinCities_IESR. And you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, sports fans? You're listening to IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'm your favorite West Coast Wisconsinite, Bernie Bango, and if you're a cheesehead, come listen to my show, Big Cheese Sports, where we road trip around America's Dairyland, previewing, reviewing, predicting, debating, and digging into all that is Wisconsin sports at the college and pro levels. Join me on IE Sports Radio, Sundays at 1 p.m. Central Standard. Bernie out.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Check out all of our amazing shows such as Big Cheese Sports, Chi-Town Weekly, The Defining Moment, and Sin City Sports with Cale Henderson. And with all that said and done, let us get on into segment number 2. So over the past weekend, we had ourselves former Set Point guest John Speraw and the U.S. men's national team partaking in the NORCECA Continental Championships in Charleston, West Virginia, as they wound up winning the whole shebang as they swept Canada in the final. So all their matches pretty much, this was kind of a multiple day event. So they managed to, so on September 5th, they managed to take down Suriname in straight sets on September 5th. September 6th, which was Tuesday. So this all happened on Tuesday. U.S. swept Suriname last Tuesday. Wednesday, they swept Puerto Rico. Thursday, they outlasted Cuba in 5 sets. And then in the quarterfinals, the U.S. had a bye. And then the U.S. wound up sweeping the Dominican Republic. And then in the final, they managed to sweep Canada 25-20, 25-14, and 25-22. So that was basically how the U.S. wound up winning the whole NORCECA Continental Championship in West Virginia. So for those that were in attendance of this, well, you're lucky, first of all, because this was in the United States. So it was kind of like how the FIVB or the VNL was in Anaheim, California. This basically got to outreach to those in the DMV area. So great stuff to the U.S. men's national team, led by former set point guest and head coach John Speraw, as well as his assistant coaches Matt Furbringer and Javier Weber. And the team consisted of Matt Anderson, Aaron Russell, Jeff Gendrick, Tim McIntosh, TJ DeFalco, Jake Haynes, Micah Christensen, Max Holt, Micah Ma, Thomas Jashke, Garrett Muagututia, Taylor Averill, David Smith, and Eric Shoji. So next up for the U.S. is actually something quite big, as they actually leave for their qualifier for the Paris Olympics in Tokyo on September 20th. So they have to head down to Tokyo for their qualifier to qualify for the Paris Olympics. So they leave on September 20th, which is not this week but next week. So next up for them is the U.S., Canada, Cuba, and 5th place Mexico will be the 4 national teams from the NORCECA Continental Championship competing in the Volleyball Olympic qualifying tournament from September 30th to October 8th. So if you didn't hear the Set Point Season 4 finale from a few weeks ago, from the last week of August, or not from the last week of August, but from mid-August, John Speraw basically said they had the NORCECA tournament, and now they have another NORCECA tournament, which is basically going to qualify them for the Paris Olympics. So nothing is guaranteed at this point, and they have to do really good in that. As I want to say they have to get like top 3 in their pool. I want to say it's like divided, but I'm not entirely certain. I'll have more details on that as that event comes up, and I really can't wait for that. And I do remember John Speraw saying that's a lot of volleyball for them. They got to prepare a lot of volleyball. They have to be away from their families, their loved ones, and it's going to be a lot of wear and tear on the body, and it's going to be all that to represent the US of A in the Paris Olympics next year. And it's going to be fun times right there, just because I feel the US definitely has a lot of experience, and they've got a lot of veteran leadership. I don't know if I hope they have some sort of youth on the team. I'm not saying that not having youth is a bad thing. I'm kind of saying that they just need some fresh legs. But we'll see. Adam Karnick pops in the chat room. He says, hello, Teran. And Larry B says, here. Hey, it's no problem, Larry. I knew you were here. He just said he's back. All right, but again, a big congratulations to John Speraw, the head coach of the U.S. men's national team and former set point guest, on winning the whole NORCECA Continental Championship. And it's actually their first NORCECA gold medal since 2017, which is quite amazing. And they only dropped 2 sets, which came from 1 match. And they finished the tournament undefeated, as they wound up going 5-0, which was good stuff right there. Micah Christensen was named the MVP, while Eric Shoji was named the best receiver of the tournament. Yes, that is the actual name of the awards, best receiver. It's not best libero, it's the best receiver. So there's your little recap right there. I wish I could have gone to this, but it's in West Virginia and not in Southern California. So I'm not going to break my back over getting plane tickets over there. Even though that would have been pretty awesome, especially since I got work here and all that stuff. Alright, but that is basically going to do it for that little recap right there. So we don't have too much to recap other than that. We don't have an AVP tournament. The championships are still yet to be announced. They don't even have a specific date on when the championships are going to be announced. Or they don't even have that on their AVP schedule, which is kind of mind-boggling if you ask me. So anyway, regardless, let us go on into the NCAA Women's Volleyball Week 4 matches to watch for. And we got ourselves quite a hefty slate, as we got ourselves a good amount of top 5 matches to watch. Top 5 matches, ranked matches. So as I mentioned earlier, we had Texas playing Rice. They were number 6 in the coaches poll. They wound up sweeping Rice, which, again, was no surprise. Tuesday, this is kind of a sneaky matchup, which kind of can be good, but I don't think it will be the greatest, but I was wrong about Long Beach State and Texas. It's number 3 Florida at unranked Florida State. Now, rivalry matches are so tough to predict just because anything can happen. But do I really think that Florida's going to drop this one to Florida State? No. I mean, it's going to be held in Tallahassee, and Florida obviously knows that a win over Florida State is still just as important as a win over Kentucky or Tennessee or Arkansas or any of that stuff. So Florida is going to come in fired up and ready to go, and they want to basically take down anyone that gets in their way. They just can't play like they did against Sacramento State, where they nearly lost in 5 sets. I still can't believe they had to go 5 to take down Sacramento State, but props to the Hornets. But the actual really good Tuesday matchup to watch for, as of this recording, is number 4 Nebraska at number 5 Stanford. So Nebraska's schedule is going to start to pick up really well, as last week they had to take on Creighton, as well as Long Beach State. But now they're hitting the road to Palo Alto, or Northern California, to take on Stanford. Now, I imagine there's going to be a lot of Stanford fans, just because Stanford doesn't really get the best crowd in terms of women's volleyball, which really annoys me. But for Stanford, they had themselves a great week last weekend as they managed to beat Ohio State and Minnesota, both of which were in the top 15. So I think it was top 15. I think Ohio State was either top 15 or top 20 in last week's poll. But regardless, the two were in the top 20. But now for Stanford, they face another Big Ten team in Nebraska. And this is always a great matchup right here. However, I always see Stanford winning this matchup. Every time Nebraska always comes in with like a lot of momentum, they're undefeated, they haven't really had anyone slow them down. I just feel that Stanford always finds a way to trip up Nebraska, which I think is huge right there. So we'll see if the Huskers can get the win on the road. But for now, I would kind of put money on Stanford, especially with the talent they have. They have Kendall Kipp and Katie Baird, Kimmy Minor, Alina Ogilvy, Sammy Francis. The list goes on and on. Then on Wednesday, we have number 1 Wisconsin at Marquette. This is kind of another sneaky good matchup just because it's an in-state rivalry matchup. I wouldn't be surprised if Marquette kind of made Wisconsin sweat, but I think Wisconsin's going to win this one quite easily. Now, obviously, Wisconsin has been challenged early this season. They almost lost to Arkansas and Tennessee, but as they had to go 5 with both of those teams. But both those teams are legit. There's a reason why they're top 20 as Wisconsin. They need all of the big-time matchups they can get before Big Ten play happens, because that target on their back is growing in terms of the Big Ten, as Nebraska's coming after them, Penn State's going to come after them, Minnesota's going to come after them. I already am looking forward to Minnesota, Wisconsin on Fox, and that's actually going to be airing after, I think, the Vikings and the Packers play one another. Correct me if I'm wrong, of course. So, volleyball on Fox, that's going to be amazing. After the NFL. I love it. So also on Wednesday, we have number 21 Kentucky at number 2 Louisville. This is kind of another in-state rivalry right here, or an inner, I wouldn't say in-state rivalry, but like an inner, like southern rivalry. But for Kentucky-Louisville, it's always a great matchup. This is always a fun little matchup right here. Last year, I remember that Louisville-Kentucky went 5. I will also say this. Don't be surprised if it goes 5. Don't be surprised if it goes 4. I would be very surprised if there was a sweep. I know Louisville is good, but you have to remember they had to go 5 with Dayton last Friday. Or not last Friday, last Wednesday. I really think that Louisville is good. I really think they do have the firepower to keep up with everybody. But don't be surprised if this one has to go the distance, just because Kentucky is obviously going to be hungry after they lost to Purdue in 5 last week. And they want to pick up the pieces after a little bit of a rocky start in terms of their season. They lost to the likes of Colorado State, and now they're just trying to pick up the pieces and go from there. Then on Wednesday, we also have number 11 Washington State taking on number 18 Baylor. So I mentioned this earlier, Washington State, they needed to beat BYU to get some momentum, as now they go from Pullman over to Texas as they play in Waco, and then they follow that up by going to Austin. So this is kind of a trap game matchup right here, but I definitely think Washington State will not be caught in the trap. If they're able to beat BYU, albeit it was at Pullman, I think they can beat Baylor. Now for Baylor, they were impressed. I mean, they have a good two-headed monster, but if they're just going to bank on those two players, then it's not going to really bode well for them. And losing to SMU didn't really do them any favors as well. But I think Baylor can still definitely make some noise with this matchup. I would not be surprised if Baylor managed to possibly take a set off of Washington State. It is going to be at Baylor, and honestly, it's tough to play at Waco. And coming off of a big win over BYU, I think that could maybe catch Washington State off guard, but at the same time, that could also boost them. I really think Washington State can win. They could definitely go 2-0, but against Baylor, they just can't look ahead to their other matchup against Texas. So that's that matchup for Wednesday. Thursday, we have number 7 Oregon at number 8 Pitt, and this is probably one of my underrated matchups to watch for. Yes, it's a top 10 matchup, but there are a lot of top 10 matchups. Like I said, we had Nebraska-Stanford, and then we have this matchup, Oregon-Pitt. We never really get to see this matchup. I think this is going to be an extremely fun matchup between the Panthers and the Ducks. I think these are two NCAA tournament teams that can definitely go deep into the tournament. Last year, Pitt made it to the Final Four. Oregon made it to the Elite Eight after upsetting Nebraska, which was darn right impressive. So I would not be surprised if we saw these two teams facing one another, as this will be played in Fitzgerald Fieldhouse, which is the big gym at the Pitt University campus. As It's Drewski pops in the chat room, he says, "Tuned in, have a great show, Teran." Thank you. I'm pretty much wrapping up here as I'm just previewing week 4 of the NCAA women's volleyball matches to watch for, but you're pretty much catching some of the good part. Also on Thursday, we have number 19 Ohio State at number 6 Texas. Now this is kind of going to be a good matchup. This isn't going to be Ohio State from last year or the year before, but they're still kind of good. I just think Texas is probably going to overwhelm them. I think Texas is just way too good, even though they lost a good amount of their fire. They lost Logan Eggleston and a few others. They still have Molly Phillips, Maddie Skinner, Asia O'Neal, and the list goes, Bella Bergmark, and the list goes on when it comes to their team and their firepower. I think they are well over the loss to Long Beach State, and the loss to Stanford, I don't think that loss to Stanford is them being bad. I think it was more so Stanford actually being good. So I think for Texas, this is kind of one of those tune-up matches, as the following day they actually have Washington State in Gregory Gymnasium. But before we get into that matchup, I got another sneaky good matchup on Thursday. UCF, or Central Florida, taking on number 17 Purdue. So UCF only has one loss to the season, and that is to Wake Forest in 5. I was very unaware of this. I did not know that UCF lost to Wake Forest. I am perplexed by this. I think if they don't have that loss, they're maybe in the consideration of top 25. Maybe they're even in the top 25. But unfortunately, that is not the case, and UCF is on the outside looking in. So if UCF wants to have any shot of making the top 25 and maybe making noise in the Big 12, they could really use this win over Purdue. But don't ultimately put money on them. I would really honestly put money on Purdue just because Purdue is the real deal. I think they are over that 1-2 weekend, which saw them losing to Loyola Chicago in 5, and which also saw them getting swept by Creighton. I think it was just more so Creighton being better than them, and then it was also just Purdue letting up on the gas pedal in set 5, which is kind of a common mistake, which is only week 1. But Purdue, obviously, like I mentioned, they have Chloe Chicoine and Eva Hudson as their two-headed monster. I think UCF can keep up with Purdue, but I just don't see them beating Purdue at Purdue. Now we jump to Friday. We have number 11 Washington State at number 6 Texas. Now, if Washington State wants to enter that top 10, this is the win that they have to pull off. I mean, they can obviously beat Baylor, but Texas is kind of a whole other story. And this is another little tune-up matchup just because next week they open up Pac-12 play, and they were chosen to finish second in the Pac-12, and they really have to come up big in Pac-12 play because it's kind of the last year there's going to be Pac-12 because everyone else is going to different conferences, which I'm still perplexed by. But for Washington State, a win over Texas on the road would definitely put them in the top 10. And it would definitely solidify them as a huge threat to anybody in the Pac-12. I really think that Washington State can definitely finish in the top 3. But they also have to watch out for the likes of Oregon. Stanford is still a thing with all those really talented players. I want to say maybe Washington can challenge them, but I don't know. Washington was a little iffy against Long Beach State. Some people say that they just cruised their way through Long Beach, and they had to go 5. I think they had to go 4 or 5 with a few other teams as well. UCLA could also challenge the likes of the top 3, Oregon, Stanford, and Washington State. I am not sure about SC. SC to me is not on my radar, and I'm sorry to say that to all USC fans, but USC just does not. They don't strike me as the team that could really do damage. But I could be wrong. They did go 3-0 in the USC in the Trojan Invitational, but their only true team that they really beat was San Diego. I don't remember the other team that they beat. I think it was maybe Marist, but SC also defeated UC Davis, which that's not really all that great of a win. I mean, it's not bad, but it's not the greatest if you ask me. As again, USC could have done so much better, and you have to remember they lost to Houston and Rice earlier in the season, so they're already behind the 8 ball in terms of trying to basically keep up with the Joneses. And it's only going to get worse and worse for them just because that Pac-12 is still pretty stacked. So we'll see what happens when it comes to USC. I really want them to do good. They're 4-4, and they did actually beat Marist. So I am actually quite impressed. For me, not paying attention to USC, I actually was impressed that I got their final opponent right, and I didn't even have to look it up. But for USC, yeah, they only beat San Diego, which is a good, decent victory, UC Davis and Marist. That's nothing really to write home about. Now they get the Boilermaker Challenge, and they get to face their future Big Ten foes in Illinois and Purdue. Let's see if USC can actually stack up to playing outside of the Galen Center and actually winning outside of the Galen Center. So, we'll see. All right, but back to Washington State. I would really like to see Washington State pull off an upset over Texas. And yes, I think this is considered an upset. I know Washington State has a majority of their team back from last year, but on paper, this is 100% upset. And remember, Texas is the reigning national champion still. And I don't think anyone really would predict Washington State to pull off this win. No offense to Washington State, of course. I think they have a very good team, but can they be very, very good against Texas on the road? And then also on Friday, we have Georgia at number 10 Georgia Tech, which I think is a sneaky good matchup just because, again, another in-state rivalry matchup. You gotta love these in-state rivalry matches. I really think that in-state rivalry matches are really unpredictable. And if I recall correctly, Georgia wound up winning this match last year despite Georgia Tech having Julia Bergman. Now, you got to remember, Georgia Tech is number 10 in the AVCA coaches poll, and they have yet to drop a match. They have some pretty darn good wins against Penn State, and they also beat Ohio State twice. So I really think that no one is taking Georgia Tech lightly all of a sudden. Everyone thought that they were going to have a little bit of a rebuilding year because, unfortunately, they lost Julia Bergman to graduation. But it is not looking like that. I really think Georgia Tech is really going to spread their wings and fly high. But I will also just say, this Georgia matchup is very appealing. I really think that Georgia can really give them a battle. And Georgia Tech is not going to get a battle outside of that until... Okay, maybe they'll get somewhat of a battle against San Diego on Sunday, but other than that, they're not going to get a true battle until they face Pitt on Friday, October 6th. But they're kind of running out of true big-time matches, which would probably catapult them into the top 10. They don't have another true ranked matchup until they face Pitt, which, can they stay undefeated all the way up till October 6th? We'll see. It's Drewski says in the chat room, UT or Texas has been party city this past weekend. I don't blame them because their football team beat Alabama, but I digress. Anyway, back to Friday's matches. We have number 19 Ohio State at number 18 Baylor. So this is another ranked-on-ranked matchup, and I really think this can be a good matchup. I think this is the battle of two teams which are trying to pick up the pieces after having weekends last week. Well, for Baylor, they had a good weekend as they wound up winning their tournament, but they also lost to SMU in 5. Now, for Ohio State, they lost to two really good teams from the Pac-12, Oregon and Stanford, in 4 sets. Now, if they had gotten blasted in 3 sets by both of those teams, then I would really say that this was a really bad weekend for Ohio State. But I think this was just more of the case of Ohio State faced two teams that were way better than them. Ohio State, like I said, they're not the team from last year. They're not the team from the year before. Riley Rader can only do so much. They can only go as far as Riley Rader takes them. So for Ohio State, they're just going to have to basically ride the wave and see what they can do. And I think playing Texas and Baylor are two really good matches. But playing them on back-to-back days is very interesting. And the same can be said for Washington State. But it is a good little tune-up because conference play is just going to be so tough for Ohio State. And them playing in a stacked Big Ten conference, woo, it's going to be something special right there. Speaking of Big Ten, this weekend we also have USC playing at number 17 Purdue. Now this is at best going to be sneaky good. I don't really expect USC to win this matchup just because, well, I don't think they'll have enough firepower to slow down Eva Hudson. Now, Skylar Fields is straight up phenomenal. I'm just going to say that USC can only go as far as Skylar Fields can take them. Without Skylar Fields, USC is average at best. And this was evident when they played Stanford last year, when they went up 2-0 against Stanford, and then Stanford woke up, they brought out the big guns, and they eventually pulled off the reverse sweep. AKA, when I arrived at USC, aka the Galen Center, USC just stopped playing good volleyball. Just kidding. That's not the reason why USC lost. It's because Stanford adjusted. But for SC, if they want to actually do good in the Pac-12, and they want to be ready for the Pac-12, this is kind of the matchup that they need to win, as well as the Illinois matchup. And they better get used to facing Purdue as well as Illinois, because they're going to be doing a lot of that next season, and then the year after, and the year after, until heaven knows they get out of the Big Ten. But for SC, they really need a true breakout win. San Diego is probably their best win of the season, but that says a lot because San Diego is not the San Diego from last year. If they were, then maybe I'd be singing a whole different tune about USC, but I knew USC was kind of suspect in terms of being ranked early on. I just did not think USC just deserved to be ranked. And that's not being anywhere mean to SC, but it's really the truth. They just bank on one player to just get them the win for the most part. So they really need someone else to basically help Skylar Fields out, because they can only go as far as Skylar Fields can take them. But we'll see. Then we only have one notable Saturday matchup, unless I missed one, but it's a big one. Number 14 Creighton at number 9 Minnesota. Oh boy, This is a good one right here. Creighton is putting on the big girl gloves, and they're going down to Minneapolis to take on Minnesota. It's going to be a fun matchup right here, just because Creighton, they kind of need a big win. They obviously beat Purdue, which I think is a good win, but beating Minnesota would be so huge. And then that would also put the Big East on notice, saying that they as a non-Power 5 conference, can be notable and noteworthy, especially since Marquette is just absolutely laying a goose egg. So I'm just saying. Now for Minnesota, they went 1-1 last week, beating Oregon but losing to Stanford. However, this win definitely needs to. They definitely need to win this one, just because if they lose, they're out of the top 10. If they win, they're still in the top 10. If they have to go 5, then they'll be borderline of being in the top 10. But I don't know if you could put Georgia Tech over Minnesota, but maybe. Just maybe. And then closing out the week, we have a lot of good Sunday matchups. Oh boy. So we'll start with this sneaky good matchup. San Diego at number 10, Georgia Tech. Now, this is as sneaky good at best, just because San Diego is nowhere near the team like last year. They have some good studs like Layla Blackwell and Amber Stivrins, but that's about as good as it gets. And then also they have Annie Evans. So we'll see what happens with San Diego. I would not be surprised if Georgia Tech winds up winning this matchup. I just really think that Georgia Tech... I'm just very surprised that Georgia Tech is really doing extremely well, and they've really impressed me. They're probably my surprise team as of right now. And then another sneaky good matchup. We have number 7 Oregon at Marquette. Well, actually, this is going to be played at Pitt, but still. Number 7 Oregon versus Marquette at Pitt. This is sneaky good at best, just because Marquette has been extremely disappointing. I think I would not be surprised if Oregon swept Marquette, just because Marquette has been reeling as of late. They just can't seem... They're just not the team that they were last year that made it all the way to the Sweet 16. And I get it, Marquette obviously scheduled tough, just because the Big East is going to be big time right there, and they obviously have to be ready for Creighton. But if they want to be well known in terms of top 25 status, they're going to need to start pulling off some upsets. And I think it kind of starts with this one. However, Oregon is just really good. They're just way too good. They've got Gabby Gonzalez. They've got Mimi Collier, Cara McGee. The list goes on and on. Georgia Murphy is fantastic at libero. So, unfortunately, I don't see Marquette winning this one. But now we get on into the big-time matchups. We have the top 5 teams playing on Sunday, which is going to be really good. We'll start with this matchup. Number 21 Kentucky at number 4 Nebraska. Now, this is kind of a little bit of an underwhelming matchup, just because I think Nebraska is way better than Kentucky. But this is a big week for Nebraska. If they want to have some sort of chance to maybe move up, which that would require Florida basically laying a goose egg, and maybe Wisconsin falling, and Louisville falling, then honestly, I will say this. This is their week to basically pull off some wins. Nebraska's got to really prove themselves. They have to prove themselves against Stanford, and then they'll obviously prove themselves against Kentucky. Now, for Kentucky, they're just not the team that everyone expected them to be. It feels weird seeing them behind Arkansas and Tennessee in terms of the AVCA coaches poll. However, I will say this about Kentucky. There's still plenty of time left, and there's a reason why they scheduled it extremely tough. I really think that Kentucky can possibly, hence the word possibly, make a little noise in this matchup. But I just feel that Nebraska is just stacked all across the board. Nebraska's only lost one set, and while their schedule is starting to pick up, I think this is the matchup where it kind of starts to slip a little bit backward, because Creighton was kind of the little bit of the tip of the iceberg that started to pick up. Then it kind of started to slip down a little bit in terms of level of toughness as they faced Long Beach State. Now it's going to get really tough when they play Stanford on Tuesday, aka tomorrow. And now they've got Kentucky, which is another really good matchup right there. But I think Nebraska should be able to handle Kentucky. I just feel with all the firepower Nebraska has, and with it being at the Bob, I just think Nebraska is just really not going to drop this one. And then also on Sunday, we have number 5 Stanford at number 2 Louisville. Oh boy, now we're getting into the real ones. Top 5 versus top 5. If Stanford wants to get back into the true top 5, if not the top 3, they got to pull this win off. I remember last year Louisville wound up winning this one in 4. I'll also say this. I think Stanford is a little bit... I think they might have a shot at winning this. They have a lot of firepower. But I will also just say... But I'll also just say this. They got to be on their A game. Because they're playing at Louisville, and I don't know if it's going to be at the KFC Yum Center. That is something I never took into consideration as... Yeah, I totally blanked on if it's going to be at the KFC Yum Center or if it's going to be at the baby gymnasium. Okay, not the baby gymnasium, the little gymnasium. I don't know. It's not going to be... It doesn't say. But either way, it is going to be in Louisville, and it's going to be a tough one. I would like to know if it's at... and I'm looking this up as we speak, I would like to know if this is at the KFC Yum Center. If it's not at the... Okay, good. It's at the KFC Yum Center. Good. I was going to say, if this is not at the KFC Yum Center, I'm going to scream. But it is at the KFC Yum Center, as well as the Kentucky matchup. So, good job to the University of Louisville for basically clearing their plans and having them play at the KFC Yum Center and not at the L&M Federal Credit Union Arena. I hope that place is packed. I really want to see the KFC Yum Center packed. Do you want to know what else is really awesome? This match is actually going to be nationally televised. It's going to be on ESPN2. ESPN2. You want to know what else was on ESPN2? Louisville, Penn State in women's volleyball. Unfortunately, Louisville wound up sweeping Penn State. But still, this is a top 5 matchup. NCAA women's volleyball is making it, people. It's becoming big time, baby. Let's go. I'm so excited for this. I only wish I wasn't working, but still, it's really awesome that we get to see a top 5 matchup on national TV. And I can't wait for it. I really think this is going to be a very, very, very fun matchup. And you want to know what's even better than one matchup on ESPN2? 2 matchups on ESPN2, as this matchup is my matchup of the week. Number 1, Wisconsin at number 3, Florida. This will also be played on ESPN2, and oh my goodness. It's times like these I wish I did not work in retail in the grocery business. This kind of makes me want to call out sick on Sunday, but I digress. Anyway, but number 1, Wisconsin hitting the road to Gainesville to take on number 3, Florida. Now, if you remember last year, this was played in Madison, Wisconsin, and Florida wound up winning this in front of a formerly record-selling crowd that eventually was eclipsed by this year's crowd at Memorial Stadium. By the way, can we also just say, can Nebraska play all of its women's volleyball matches at Memorial Stadium? Because I think they perform better than their football team. I digress. Anyway, but back to Wisconsin, Florida. Top 3 matchup. It does not get any better than this. I think this is going to be a barn burner, and I'm so happy they're putting this on ESPN2. National TV, it does not get any better than that. So, great job to ESPN, and I really want to see the viewership really go up. I really want to see high viewership when it comes to this match. I'll even go as far as to basically watch on my phone and then watch on my laptop. Now, this matchup does start at 2 p.m. I imagine that's like maybe 2 p.m. Eastern time or 2 p.m. I want to say it's 2 p.m. Eastern time. Not entirely sure, but the Louisville-Stanford matchup is actually 10 a.m. Pacific time, so maybe that's actually 2 p.m. Pacific time. So we'll see what happens, and if that is the case, then so be it. But if not, then honestly, I will hope to catch a good portion of the match. And I really can't wait for both of those matchups on ESPN2. Like, we really got to see more of these ranked-on-ranked matchups. Like, we really got to see Wisconsin-Nebraska on ESPN2. Like, that's got to be a thing right there. I mean, it's cool that it's on Big Ten Network, but it has to come to a point where we got to see all these Big Ten matchups nationally ranked. I know it's a Big Ten thing, but still. I know we're getting Wisconsin-Minnesota on Fox/FS2 on October 29th, which would be following the Packers-Vikings game, but still, I want to see more of these nationally ranked matches, or these ranked-on-ranked matches on national TV. I think it would be very fun. But it just shows that the sport of volleyball is growing, not just in terms of the collegiate level, but the pro level, but in maybe the high school level. Because I remember there was one tournament that was nationally televised that Cathedral Catholic, I think, was participating in. That was on like ESPN Plus. Either way, it just shows that all volleyball is growing, and we got to continue to do our part to continue to grow the game. But that is pretty much that for all of Week 4's top matches to watch for. And ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. It is that time to drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I appreciate you. Big shout out to the chat room, Adam Karnick, It's Drewski, Larry B, and Mike Pat. I really do appreciate y'all tuning in. I will not be at any volleyball matches this weekend. I don't think there are any notable volleyball matches. I know Long Beach State is in Arizona, and then UCI is partaking in the WAC Big West Challenge at Cal State Fullerton, so there's that right there. So I think I'm going to skip out on going to any volleyball matches. If anything, I'll just be at tomorrow's matchup between Huntington Beach and Santa Margarita. Obviously just to see my good friend Craig Pizzanti, the former Set Point guest and whatnot. But that'll basically be it for me and for Set Point. I will be back next Monday for another episode of Set Point. Regular time, regular place, regular everything. And for SoCal Supreme Sports Show, I should be back on the regular Friday at noon Pacific time. Basically same time, same place, same SoCal Supreme Sports Show. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have yourself a great rest of the weekend. Enjoy the volleyball action. We only have one more week until conference play happens. I'll see you all Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Peace!